Let's take you back to the war in Ukraine now. President Zelensky has cut his trip to South Africa short after 8 people were killed and more than 70 injured in a fresh wave of strikes across Ukraine last night. Yasko is a member of the Ukrainian parliament and a member of the Ukrainian delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Good to have you with us here on Sky News. What do you make of the events of so far today? It must be so difficult to talk about peace when at the same time missiles and drones continue to strike the centre of your cities.
Exactly. There is no single sign of any will from Russia to have real peace. And absolutely heartbreaking minutes, moments, hours, days when we see more and more strikes on Ukrainian cities, not only on infrastructure, but also on civilians. And you were showing that footage of that night in Kyiv, which was very, very hard night. I have my family in Kyiv now, my child. Of course, they didn't sleep. Unfortunately, ballistic missiles reached some of the goals, and many buildings are destroyed. Many civilians suffered. We have victims, including killed and seriously injured. But even more dramatically, saying we don't see the end. There is no light in all of that, because we see that just everything continues, and that's very hard.
As a Ukrainian, as a mum, how do you feel when missiles continue to strike your capital city, your home, 3 years on from the start of this war?
I feel terrible. Like, now I'm on the mission in the Council of Europe abroad. I'm not in Ukraine, but I almost didn't sleep all this night because I'm following, of course, all information on what is flying in the sky. But I cannot stop that. The only thing that I can do as an MP, as a politician, as Ukrainian, is to continue speaking up, to advocate for more security measures in different countries, in alliance, building more security measures for the future. But we should say, honestly, we have to continue putting pressure on Putin. But in recent weeks and months, what we hear from United States is that, that maybe we can kind of forgive something to Russia, or even not naming things with the real names. As a mom and as a human, this is like disastrous thing to hear, because you want to see some future in peace in your life, in the life of your country, in the life of your children, but you can't, just because things go in such a hypocritical way.
With that in mind, I'm interested for your reaction to these comments that the Reuters news agency have brought us from the Kremlin. I'm going to quote them to you, if you don't mind. It says, Trump's comment that Ukraine lost Crimea years ago and is not a point of discussion fully corresponds with our understanding. That is the Kremlin referencing comments made by the American president.
Oh, this is like the words that Ukrainians cannot accept. And I'm afraid to say that we become, like, we unfortunately get quite anti-American sentiments within our society, which is very bad, because we need to have the United States as a good partner. And but with such statements, when you have people being killed every day, how can you listen to such statements? That's very hard for ordinary people. That's also very hard for us politicians to explain to people why the shape of the world is like that.
You said you need to have the United States as a good partner. Does it currently feel like a good partner?
Of course, now it's being challenged, but we need to make sure that we keep the United States on the right track of the history, because we need them for security cooperation, for economic cooperation. We need them even if they choose to have, let's say, a little bit different geopolitical position. We need to have Europe strong, but we also need other allies in the world that will be supporting the common sense. So we have to invest in that relationship as well.
If the American peace plan, as it's currently being proposed, and it's rumoured to suggest that effectively, according to the Americans, Russia will be able to retain control of Crimea and roughly the area that it currently controls in the east of your country, might see the United States run the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and potentially feed power to both Ukraine and Russia. That's what is being mooted by the White House. If that was to come before you as parliamentarians in Ukraine, what would your response be?
For me, that's very hard to imagine to have the support within Ukrainian society and in Ukrainian parliament for that. That's not only about the land, but also it's about the respect for Ukrainian sovereignty. And with such statements, we don't see that respect. We also don't see what actually are the compromise that could be coming from Russia. Like, we only hear what we have to give up, why we have to stop, why Zelensky, according to Trump, doesn't have cards in his hands. Yes, maybe in a cruel world, our cards is humanity. But if it's something that we have to be fighting again and again, we will continue fighting for that, because that's not only important for us, but also for humanity, which goes much beyond, wider than Ukraine.
You talk about it going wider than Ukraine. It obviously deeply affects European allies, the European Union. It is war on the European continent for the first time at such scale for many decades now. Whilst there are question marks over the level of support and the consistency of that support from the United States, how are you finding the messaging and support from European nations at the moment?
I'm grateful for that European leadership that is not only developing, but actually becomes very strong. And that comes not only with words, but also with actions. And I'm now in Sweden, and so you know that Sweden joined the NATO recently. We hear lots of strong action positions, and also ideologically, philosophically, very important statements from European leaders that we cannot forgive Putin. We cannot give the part of European land to the Putin just because someone wants that. So I think this European leadership is very promising, but we have to be very mindful and wise about the future, because it requires not only short-term planning, but also long-term.
Lisa Yasko, Ukrainian MP, joining us live here on Sky News. Thank you so much.